what's going on? This is the Club of the Man 1993 coming at you. I'm sorry I've not been keeping up to date with these SummerSlam reviews. Just been a lot going on the past few days. I did watch SummerSlam 2001 like in pieces this past week because of how busy I was. So I definitely may not have the clearest memory of everything I remember seeing. So I'm going to try my best to talk about this show as much as I could because this was a pretty good SummerSlam. I say this is probably, in my opinion, like looking at the rankings for the other SummerSlams, this may be the top one in the top five. I'd say next year's SummerSlam is either the best or the second best. Well, it'll probably be the second best, because in my opinion, I still think SummerSlam 2013 is the greatest SummerSlam of all time, in my honest opinion. But let's just get right into it. This SummerSlam 2001 again took place, a few months after WrestleMania 17, which, as we all know, is probably the greatest pay-per-view of all time, or the greatest WrestleMania of all time. Just a legendary show and everything. And of course, it's around a time where WCW and ECW like really tanked, and this is like a whole invasion angle happened. Vince McMahon bought WCW, and Stephanie McMahon-Helmsley bought ECW. So it's pretty much a bunch of WWE or still WWF. This is the last year actually that I believe the WWF was under the WWF, because next year I think it was in May or something like that. It changed to WWE because of the whole wild worldwide fun or thing that happened at WWF, pretty much, you know what I mean. So this one was pretty much like a bunch of competition between WWF and WCW superstars. Some superstars had to choose which side that they were on, pretty much. Some based off of just storyline going on as well. I know the whole invasion angle thing, of course, some people say it didn't go over as well. People hope so, but there were still some bright spots with this as well. So let's get into the show. Again, we heard a lot of names of a lot of future big stars that we know of today. This show took place on, if I get back to the top of my notes here for a second, August 19th, 2001 at the Compaq Center in San Jose, California. We started off with a really good Intercontinental Championship match. It was Lance Storm, the champion, taking on Edge, who was, at the this was the start of his singles run for his career, and this is probably his first singles championship match I know of off the top of my head. Of course, there was something going on seeming with him and Christian, not quite being on the same page, really, as Christian did try to interfere in this match, and he almost costed Edge the match, pretty much. There was also, of course, a moment backstage also after this match where, Christian and Edge were talking. I guess, they were talking to one of their grandmas or something like that, and one tried talking to them, hung up on the phone. But anyways, the match with Storm and Edge was still a really good match. Again, a couple years ago, the other SummerSlam I watched, I think it was last year's SummerSlam, or when it was SummerSlam the same year where it was Stone Cold and The Undertaker, I believe it was. Whichever one it was. Again, it's been a while, so I kind of have a little bit of foggy memory. But I remember the show where it was Mark Miro and Jacqueline taking on Edge and Sable. I know it wasn't really one of the greatest tag matches, but I still thought it was fun for what it was. Saw a lot of potential in Edge definitely back then. And I think Edge really did another show near the crowd, was really into this match. I feel like it probably is one of the better opener matches we've seen the SummerSlam so far, maybe of all time also. Of course, this is Edge bringing the WWF Intercontinental Championship, I think, believe back to the WWF also. I think Lance Storm was part of WCW, or whichever one he was a part of. But just another great, fun match. Again, the story also there, again, there was some tension, seeming tease between Edge and Christian also at the time. So again, Edge got involved there again. Christian got involved, almost cost Edge the match, but Edge still came up with the it wasn't the spear, I forgot what the finishing move was called that he used, but he picked up the victory there with and he became the new Intercontinental Champion. Again, I believe was his first singles title, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure. Of course, you'll know he would eventually get to, main event status when he cashed in on John Cena at 2006 New Year's Resolution, which we'll, of course, be talking about some big matches. He has SummerSlam in the later 2000s, more down the line. But good opening match between Lance Storm and Edge. Edge is your new Intercontinental Champion. We had a backstage interview also with Test and the Dudleys explaining why they turned their back on the WWF, and the Dudleys also saying how they just felt shadowed by Spike Dudley and his wife Molly Holly, which pretty much is set for this six-man tag match. We got Spike Dudley and the APA, which was Farouk and Bradshaw, with Molly Holly taking on a team of Test and the Dudley Boys. For the most part, it was a solid like 6-man tag match. It wasn't quite as good as I probably expected it to be from all 6 of these guys. Of course, Shane McMahon was in charge of WCW at the time. That's where Test and the Dudleys were wrestling for, I believe. But anyways, we got the match though ended though when Shane McMahon came out and when the referee wasn't looking, hit I think it was I forgot who Shane McMahon hit off the distraction, but that's what caused the heel team of Test and the Dudley Boys to win the match. It was still a solid match, but I feel like it could have been a little bit better than it was for the most part. But the heels won the match. Then we had this match. It was pretty much a title for title match. Pretty much, it was Tajiri, the WWF Lightweight Champion, taking on X-Pac, who was a WCW Cruiserweight Champion. The match started off kind of good, but then it didn't really, it probably set its tone. I felt at the beginning of what a match it could be between these two, cruiserweight style wrestlers. Unfortunately, it just didn't get into the other gear, so it was more so of a decent match than whatnot. Of course, X-Pac would go on to win the match, and because he won that match, he took both the lightweight and the WCW Cruiserweight championships with him. So that match was, decent. One of the weaker matches on the card, but it was still decent for what it was. Then we had, this was when Chris Jericho was involved in the feud with Stephanie McMahon-Helmsley, of course, back in the days. But of course, she was taking on Stephanie's, monster from ECW, Rhino. The match, for the most part, I thought was pretty fun. It did have a couple sloppy moments in it also, so, it definitely affected this for being, like, a great match. So it was more so just a good match. Of course, Stephanie tried to get involved several times to, beat down Chris when the referee wasn't looking and whatnot, but did not look, as Jericho eventually got Rhino to tap out to the walls of Jericho to get the victory. And I believe, the feud between Stephanie and Y2J still continued on down the line as well. So unfortunately, well, I should say unfortunately, but this was not the end somewhat. But it was still a good match, but unfortunately it didn't go over as good as expected. And then we had that Steve Sistak, or whatever the heck his name was, backstage. Several times we had The Rock being interviewed, because this was like, because The Rock went on a small hiatus, a 2-month hiatus after he lost the championship to Stone Cold Steve Austin when he turned heel at WrestleMania 17. He lost the championship, and of course he went to WC. I think he was with WCW. Took the WWF championship to WCW under ECW, whichever it was, under Stephanie McMahon. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think ECW. I can't remember. I haven't watched it. I haven't watched it in a couple days, but I'm just trying to remember everything it was without going back. And watching it again. But anyways, there was that one dude named Brian or Steve Sistak, or whatever his name was, who kept trying to charge in on The Rock every time, but every time he would miss and like run to a wall or something like that. It's kind of dull, but it was still kind of comical for what it was. It involved The Rock. Because The Rock was making The Rock's big return pretty much. But we had those segments. This was a fun match. Jeff Hardy versus Rob Van Dam in a Hardcore Championship ladder match. The match again it definitely was another good ladder match. I felt against two guys who were meant for like the high flying style pretty much, and using the ladders. They used the ladders pretty well to like beat each other down, and then as like it got close to the end, instead of just more so beating each other down, more so focus on just climbing the ladder and getting to the Hardcore title. Just a lot of great spots in this match. But of course, RVD, becoming the ECW legend that he eventually would become, won the match by climbing the ladder. Of course, became your new champion. I don't know what to really say. Again, it was a really good match. It was like an A- worthy match. I think I gave it in my notes here. But yeah, so RVD is your new Hardcore champion. Then we had DDP and Kanyon from the WWF taking on the Brothers of Destruction, part of WCW at the time, with Sarah, which was this is the storyline here. This is the storyline here where DDP came into the WWF as the guy who was stalking the Undertaker's wife. This was for the WWF and WCW Tag Team Championships, pretty much together. Pretty much, it was just a long squash match from the Brothers of Destruction. It was just average. It wasn't really like that great of a steel cage match. I mean, again, it's just more so based off of the storyline of this one side beat down on DDP for stalking Taker's wife Sarah. Pretty much, it was just weird. Again, it was just out of place for DDP's character, especially with how legendary he was in WCW. Just to come over to WWF, of course, and all WCW guys got treated like shit, pretty much. But the Brothers of Destruction won. They get their revenge on DDP, pretty much, for stalking Taker's wife. That's all I can really say about the show. About the episode. I mean, the match. But this match was great. For the WWF Championship, it was Stone Cold Steve Austin taking on Kurt Angle for the WWF Championship. Of course, they were on separate brands. Stone Cold Steve Austin was a heel now, even though, it was still hard to not cheer for Stone Cold Steve Austin because we all knew the hardworking badass he was. This match, though, was awesome. I mean, what hurt it, though, the fact that it was a DQ finish because of a crooked referee in there, disqualified Kurt Angle. He was obviously siding, with Stephanie McMahon and whatnot, unfortunately. So, I mean, that hurt the finish a little bit, but this match was awesome. Austin, I felt, brought out the best in Kurt Angle. It was a match that pretty much made Kurt Angle a true main eventer. I mean, I know he was SummerSlam 2000. I think SummerSlam 98 or 99, we'll go use the year when Austin faced Taker. But SummerSlam, yeah, I think it was 98. SummerSlam 2000, I remember now, bringing my right, was the triple threat between Triple H, Rock, and Angle. To a storyline, involving Triple H and Angle pretty much for the most part. But he was still, Kurt was still, working his way up, I felt, at the time. But this was when Kurt Angle more so became a true main eventer, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, despite, the dirty finish with the DQ, it still, was one of those losses that, it truly made, Kurt Angle a respectable main event star, pretty much, I felt. But that's what happened there, pretty much. So Austin retained the championship thanks to a crooked referee. Afterwards, Angle put the referee, though, in the ankle lock. But it was still an awesome match. Again, they brought the best out of each other, and again, it made Angle a main eventer. But then the real main event was Booker T with Shane McMahon taking on The Rock for the WCW Championship. The match was all right. I mean, Booker T didn't really have the greatest run in the WWF after he came over from WCW. But this match was just more about The Rock making his big return. So I feel like they didn't put as much effort in making it feel like, a big deal main event. I mean, it was still good, but, especially after following, the near classic, and I say near classic because of the finish that Austin and Angle had, pretty much. So I definitely, felt that this match should not have gone unless Austin and Angle should have, but it still was good for what it was. But again, it focused a little too much on just being The Rock's first match back in 2 months, pretty much, if you know what I mean. And the fact that he chose WWF over all the other, promotions in the Invasion angle. That's pretty much it. Again, I probably could have talked a little bit more about this one if I didn't, wait too long to record this review. But, I don't want to go back and watch it again because I don't have the time. I just want to keep it moving on here. So, overall, though, this was still a great SummerSlam. I know the Invasion angle didn't go over as good as hoped so, but I still give this show an A-, an A- for SummerSlam 2001. What grade would you give SummerSlam 2001? Leave that down in the comment section below. And as always, for click my like and subscribe more content on my channel. Follow me on Twitter at TheManAirborne93. Next up is SummerSlam 2002. Which may be the second best SummerSlam of all time, especially with the big match that's involved in there, involving two stars who were not on this SummerSlam, one to injury and one they didn't think was ever going to come back to wrestling at all whatsoever. The 4-year hiatus ends, though, and the big return happens next summer. So I'll see you guys in SummerSlam 2002. So with that, guys, I am checking out. I'll see you all later. So until then, peace out, everybody.